go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Merriman?
Here.
Mr. Mattern?
Here.
Dr. Scarpone?
Present.
Fiscal officer is absent. Solicitor, Mr. Lynn?
Present.
Mayor Mike Petrola?
Present.
Administrator, Mr. Kasegi?
Present.
Mr. DeStefano?
Here.
Mr. Spence here. Mrs. Dearman?
Will everyone please stand for a moment of silence in the pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Through the advisement of our solicitor, I spoke to him about this. Until a fiscal officer position is filled, we need to make a motion each and every meeting to appoint myself administrator and/or clerk for the minutes. Can I get a motion to appoint Randy Spence as administrator and/or clerk for this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Merriman?
Yay.
Mr. Mattern?
Yay.
Dr. Scarpone?
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yay.
Mr. Spence? Yay. Mrs. Dearman?
Yay.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve our regular meeting on March 16th, 2023, our special meeting on March 30th, 2023, March 31st, 2023, and April 1st, 2023? Can I have a motion to approve all four sets of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Merriman?
Yay.
Mr. Mattern?
Abstain.
Dr. Scarpone?
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yay.
Mr. Spence? Yay. Mrs. Dearman?
Yay.
All right, meeting's approved. Is there anyone wishing to appear before council this evening? Okay, moving right along. We'll now read our ordinances and resolutions, which I will turn it over to our solicitor, Jake Lynn.
First ordinance is 2023-03, an ordinance providing for retroactive pay raise for a village employee. This is a third read.
Can I get a motion to accept the motion for ordinance 2023-03?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Merriman?
Yeah.
Mr. Mattern?
Abstain.
I don't,
I need to look at the rules real quick. So on Rule 7 here, voting, every member present shall vote on any question of the calls of yeas and nays unless excused by unanimous consent of the council. Any member not being excused who refuses to vote on any question when the yeas or nays are being taken shall be deemed guilty of contempt of the council and may for such contempt be censured by a majority of the vote of council, except if the council member was not present at the previous meeting, then they may abstain from voting on the approval of the minutes. That's Rule 7 of the council rules for the village of Wintersville.
So it's okay to abstain on the minutes parts, but everything else, it's a yea or nay?
Correct.
Okay.
Unless excused by the rest of council.
Okay.
From the vote, from
All right.
an abstention.
So, nay.
Dr. Scarpone?
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yay.
Mr. Spence? Yay. Mrs. Dearman?
Yay.
The next ordinance is 2023-04, an ordinance creating and adopting section 151.02 of the codified ordinances of the village of Wintersville. This is a third read.
Can I get a motion to accept ordinance 2023-04?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Merriman?
Yay.
Mr. Mattern?
Yay.
Dr. Scarpone?
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yay.
Mr. Spence? Yay. Mrs. Dameron?
Yay.
The next reading is ordinance 2023-05, an ordinance creating and adoption section 15102H of the codified ordinances of the Village of Wintersville. This is also a third read.
Could I get a motion to accept ordinance 2023-05?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Merriman?
Yay.
Mr. Mattern?
Yay.
Dr. Scarpone?
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yay.
Mr. Spence? Yay. Mrs. Dameron?
Yay.
The next ordinance is 2023-09, an ordinance for changing the building inspector to the code inspecting officer. This is a second read. Oh, that's right. Excuse me. The next ordinance is 2023-28, an ordinance providing for amending and revising the appropriations of expenditures for the Village of Wintersville for the calendar year 2023 and declaring an emergency.
Excuse me. Did we hit 10? Or
I think we skipped 10.
we skipped 10?
Oh, excuse me.
That's all right.
Let's go back to 10. Ordinance 2023-10, an ordinance amending section 1341 of the codified ordinances of the Village of Wintersville. This is a third read.
That one was the second read.
Second.
No, I think that was a typo.
Oh, it's a typo?
Yes.
Okay,
I talked to Tammy earlier today.
okay. Then, now we'll move on to ordinance 2023-28. An ordinance providing for amending and revising the appropriations of expenditures for the Village of Wintersville for the calendar year 2023 and declaring an emergency.
Could I get a motion to suspend the rules for ordinance 2023-28?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Merriman?
Yay.
Mr. Mattern?
Yay.
Dr. Scarpone?
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yay.
Mr. Spence? Yay. Mrs. Dameron?
Yay.
Could I get a motion to accept ordinance 2023-28?
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, on the first one. Any questions? I forgot to ask that first time around. Mr. Merriman?
Yay.
Mr. Mattern?
Yay.
Dr. Scarpone?
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yay.
Mr. Spence? Yay. Ms. Dameron?
Yay.
The next is Resolution 2023-29, a resolution authorizing participation in the ODOT salt contracts award in 2023. And this is a
That was
first
the
read for that
yeah.
one.
First read.
Next is ordinance number 2023-30, an ordinance creating and implementing section 933.13 of the codified ordinances of the Village of Wintersville, Ohio. This is a first read. Next is ordinance number 2023-31, an ordinance amending section 1341.04, titled Time for Abatement of the codified ordinances of the Village of Wintersville, Ohio. This is a first read.
I'd like to ask council if they would like to suspend the rules on this one or not, because this one pertains to the high grass in the village. And we know that summer's just right around the corner, grass is growing. Do we want to wait a few more meetings before this takes effect, or do we want to suspend the rules for this?
I would be in favor of suspending the rules.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules for ordinance 2023-31.
I would second that.
Any questions? Mr. Merriman?
Yay.
Mr. Mattern?
Yay.
Dr. Scarpone?
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yay.
Mr. Spence? Yay. Ms. Dameron? Yay.
Yay.
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion to accept 2023-31.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Mr. Merriman?
Yay.
Mr. Mattern?
Yay.
Dr. Scarpone?
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yay.
Mr. Spence? Yay. Ms. Dameron?
Yay.
All right, that'll conclude our ordinances and resolutions this evening. On to our announcements. The Indian Creek Reverse Raffle will be April 21st, 2023. Rotary Club will be having their 102nd dinner, April 26th, 2023, 6 p.m. at St. Florian Hall. We'll have the Cynthia's Rainbow 5K Run, May 21st, 2023, at Indian Creek High School at 9 a.m. The FOP Lodge 97 will be having their annual golf outing, June 11th, 2023. And Thunder in the Ville will be June 23rd and 24th with fireworks on Saturday night. Moving on to reports and communications. We will do the Magistrate Court report. Our city revenue. Our city revenue for the month of March 2023 was $9,582.26. State revenue was $2,174.50. Other revenue, $200.97. For a total revenue for the month of March 2023, $11,964.73. Our police report for March 2023, we had 123 complaints, 172 incoming calls, 31 different cases, 12 alarm calls, 6 juvenile cases, and 75 traffic arrests. Code enforcement for the month of March 2023, we had 22 licenses for a total of $1,650. We had 4 permits for $100 for a grand total of $1,750 for the month of March. Mr. Lockhart, do you have anything this evening? All right, thank you, sir. I know Charlene is not here. Moving on to the mayor's report. I'm going to keep it short and sweet here. Just want to let council know we did order the signs for Beechwood Drive and Beechwood Boulevard. Hopefully they'll be here within a couple weeks. I want to thank everyone that helped on the water break on Cross Street. I know they had a heck of a time with the concrete cutting through the road. I want to thank those guys. Also want to thank all the departments. Everyone's been working very well. A lot of things happening, getting ready for a lot of different projects this spring and summer. Just want to remind the citizens, we are closed tomorrow for the Easter holiday. The offices will be back open on Monday. And that is all I have for my report this evening. Moving on to the administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a whole lot this meeting. I'll have more next. Road salt. So our new contract is out. It just came out about a week or so ago. We just ordered our last 160 tons of salt for our last contract. We were allotted 1,500 tons. 160 tons made it to 90% of what we were allowed to, or what we could order, would still be valid with the contract. So it was 1,360 tons. And we are completely full of salt for next year. The grant, the Bureau of Workers' Compensation grant, I've been working on that. I've talked with the different department heads, and it looks like possibly portable traffic lights is something that we could order and we could have. I have to get more information on. I'm still getting more prices. So that grant is a 3-to-1 match. You can once you have it, you have 3 years to order from it. So the maximum contributions, Bureau of Workers' Comp will contribute $40,000. So 3-to-1, we would contribute $13,000. That would give us about $53,000 towards a purchase. And then once we get that done, we can apply for it again and have another 3 years to order what we need. So I will have more information on that next meeting. The H2O Ohio grant that I completed when I first got hired here should have a decision or denial it by the end of the month. That was for $10,000. We wanted a hydraulic chainsaw and a valve exerciser. So we'll find out on that. So on the road paving, we're still contingent for an award through OPWC for Rex, Day Circle, Simpson, Patton, and Russell, and part of Woodridge Drive. So there's 12 municipalities that are above us that got funded. We're number 13. So if the only way that we're going to get funding is if one of the 12 drop out. So as soon as I find out something, I'll let you know. The only thing I have is the water meter project. I'll have more information on that. I've spent the last 2 weeks working on that situation, and I'll have a lot to tell you at the next meeting. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. All right, moving on to unfinished business. Anybody have any unfinished business? Okay. Moving along to new business. Council, I would like to get a motion to approve Melanie Smith to go ahead and speak. She's our traveling clerk.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Merriman?
Yay.
Mr. Mattern?
Yay.
Dr. Scarpone?
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yay.
Mr. Spence? Yay. Mrs. Damerman?
Yay. Is she going to go
Four.
ahead, or we'd have to make a comment first?
Oh, you go ahead.
I just wanted to announce that, thank the village employees, the mayor, and Bob Coppa for power washing and priming and putting the base coat on the Great Wall of Wintersville project. And the students will be, we have a meeting Monday, and the students should be starting on painting that wall on the 15th of April. So we're very excited that we're getting that moving along.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you. Go ahead, Melanie. Turn it over to you.
Yeah, I want to start by introducing myself to you all because I'm not from this area. I'm actually from Zanesville, Ohio, so I travel over here and spend the night a few times a week to help you guys out. I was actually hired because your fiscal officer has moved on to another position, so they contracted with me to come in and assist the village of Wintersville while they were trying to locate a new clerk. So that's really how I came here, and that's why we contracted for that purpose. However, while I've been here, we've located some things, we've found some things that we've had to do more research on. Lucky for you, I'm a former state auditor. I spent 20 years in the state auditor's office. I've also been a director of accounting in a college, a director of accounting in a DD board, and a mental health board. And I also have a village that I work for full-time, well, it's not full-time, part-time that I work for. And I do travel around helping other villages out when they have issues. So in this area, I worked with the village of Yorkville, village of Dillonville, and let's see where else I've been, Powhatan Point, Holloway. Those are down the road a little bit, but I've been around the area. So, but I've also been retired for 15 years, so this is what I do for fun. So, to tell you where I've been and my background and what's going on. So it's hard for me not to see things as a 20-year auditor. If I see something and a red flag flies, I have to report it to not only to the administration here, but also to the state auditor's office. That's what we are required to do if we come across something. So, but we didn't start out this way. We didn't start out saying this is a gotcha game and, you know, we're coming in here with a former auditor trying to do something. That's not how this started. I was just here to keep payroll going, pay bills, take care of everything until somebody could get hired. So, in doing so and working with the budgets and working with the system that's set up here for the village, we've come across some things that need to be reported, need to be disclosed. One of the things we ran into is the budget that's actually created. It starts back with the certificate of year-end expenditures, which takes you a cash balance, which takes you into the estimated revenue, then leads you over to the appropriations. And I know some of this is going to be very technical, and I apologize because it is a little technical. But you start out by filing with the county auditor's office your cash balances from the prior year. You then put on that form. The county gives you the tax numbers. They make up the tax numbers. The next thing that goes on to that form is what you believe your new revenue the village will generate for the year coming up. The columns add together across, and you end up with an estimated number, which is used to set appropriations. You're temporary at that point because it's brand new right off the bat. So you start with the temporary appropriations. In Wintersville, they do it a little bit differently, or have over the years done a little bit differently, where the cash balance is not only on the front column, the first column, but it's again added to the third column, which inflates, technically, the revenue coming in, because it looks like you're going to bring in that additional cash balance. So it's actually estimated a second time in those numbers. In doing that, it kind of inflates things, because that money is already over here, doesn't really need to be over here. When you do that, then your number that's available to appropriate is also large, because now this number's higher. So when you set your appropriations, or at least when Wintersville set their appropriations, they use lines called, on the first side, on the revenue side, they used a other financing source line. On the expenditure side, to make up for that increased cash balance being in there twice, is they used a contingency line. Now, when I used to work for the county, you would do this. Your budget was kind of set this way because they wanted you to zero budget. The county commissioner said, here's what I'm going to allow you to have, how are you going to spend it? Normally out in a village, you don't do that. But it is a method. It's not illegal. It is something that the village of Wintersville has budgeted that way for a while. When I saw it, I said, it's not a good idea, because you still have to have money at the end of the year to operate into the next year. So if you lay everything out there in the appropriations, there's a possibility that it can all be spent. So you really don't tend to do that. You got to hold money back, because our settlements only come in twice a year. We just received it today. The first settlement came in. The village received $207,000 in settlement money that came in today. And we had to survive until today with our cash balances that carried over. So in doing that, you have to be really careful, because you have to payroll. You've got bills to pay. You've got things that have to be done right up front of a fiscal year. And if you don't have enough cash, you can have problems. So you always protect your cash balance. The rule of thumb is you should have a fourth of your appropriations from the prior year, should be in cash, and should roll, hopefully, into the next year. That's the rule of thumb. That's where you want to be. Have I found villages that don't have that? Oh, yes. But you don't want to be there, because it's not a pretty way to go. So that was one of the first problems I ran into, is the budgets were technically overinflated. So when I talked to the county auditor about it, he said, yes, let's go ahead and reduce the amended certificate back down to where it should be. So the certificate went in at $14 million, and we pulled $4 million back out of it. So, and technically that's the cash balance, was the $4 million. So after we did that, I sent it back in, and they certified out the $11 million instead of the $14 million. So then from there, I had a conversation about the appropriations. And he said, well, the temporary appropriations did get filed and have been filed. However, you have not filed permanent appropriations since 2017. And I said, really? He said, yes. So when we started looking at the appropriations, we realized that we also needed to remove those contingency lines out of the appropriations, because if we're going to take that revenue off the front side, we need to take it off the back side as well. So we stripped out all of those contingency lines. So our budget now is more in line with the actual activity that will occur in the year. There's nothing inflated in there, there's nothing extra in there now. It's flat. And we did file with the county auditor's office by April 1st, which is the requirement date, our permanent appropriations for 2023. So for the first time since 2017, we've complied with the county as we are supposed to. Now, these poor guys had midnight meetings to get there, but we did make it and we did get filed. And I approved and appreciate all you guys coming in the middle of the night to get that done. But we were able to accomplish that, and it took a lot of work with a lot of people in this village to take a look at these numbers, because we had to really dive into some of these numbers to find out what was in these line items. Is that supposed to still be in these line items? Is it not supposed to be still in this line item? Should it be in another line item? But we spent hours and hours and hours dissecting the line items for the village. One of the other issues I noticed with the temporary appropriation was passed at what we call a line item level. When you do that, you cannot move any money, not even a dollar, without council's approval. So if I have a line items that we consider to be benefits to an employee, whether it would be retirement or whether it be Medicare, I can't move between those two lines. Even though they're both in the 200 codes, I can't move without council's permission. Believe me, they do not want to hear me ask them for a dollar movement or a small amount of money moved. So normally you pass at what we call the object code. And the last budget that they passed, the permanent appropriations, was actually set in at the object code. 100s are payroll, 200s are benefits, 300s are contract services, 400s are supplies and materials, so on and so forth. When you do that, I have the permission and ability to move between the 100s, 200, the 100s stay together, the 200s stay together, 300s stay together. But I can make those small movements without going to council. I cannot jump between a 300 and a 200 without their permission, but I can move within the line. So it just frees up the flexibility to move and pay bills and deal with day-to-day without asking council to approve lines and lines and lines of activities. If you are doing that, you're passing at a line item level and you are moving things without council's permission, you are technically in violation. So if somebody does set the budget that way and they are moving money without coming to council, that's a problem. So that you don't want to set it that way to begin with. So that was one of the other issues. Another issue I ran into when we were dealing with the certificate and the appropriations is I had 4 funds that were on the certificate and in the appropriations. It was the OPWC Moon Valley, the OWDA Moon Valley, the OPWC Beechwood, and the USDA Police Grant. Those 4 funds amounted to $579,550. None of it had ever been awarded. So it was on the certificate and in the appropriations, but they never got the awards, so they shouldn't be on the books at all. So there was another 600 that was part of that $4 million that we had to move, because there really shouldn't. Normally, you don't appropriate grants until you know you've been awarded. So you kind of wait a little bit, don't get ahead of the game, slow down, get it on there. When you get awarded, you've got plenty of time to get it on the books. So just something that was also on there that had to be stripped out. Also, the enterprise funds didn't correctly reflect the upcoming loan and activity for 2023. It's been an issue with this village for a while, and it has been in the audit report several years in a row that says that when you get a grant from the OPWC, OWDA, or the EPA, you don't always move the money in and out yourself. These granting agencies literally move the money over to the contractors for you. But you are required to bring that revenue and that expense onto your books. It's required because it's on your behalf. Therefore, it should be on your village books. And for years, it has not been recorded on your books, and material adjustments have been made to your financial statements for years to bring that activity on. So you don't technically touch the cash, but it's a paper transaction that is required to be put on your books to make sure that they're fairly stated. And that's kind of where the audit is going. They want to make sure that when the audit is over, that the financial statements that are being presented are fairly stated. And that's why they make those audit adjustments. So that's another issue. The activity was being on and off the books, not properly done. Let's see what else we got here. The audit letter for 2021, because 22 audit is under way now, but it's not released yet. So we do not have the audit findings for 22. However, I did look at the material weaknesses in the audit report for 21 to see if I was seeing things that are new, or am I seeing things that have been in the past, and are things not getting corrected? And that's where we need to begin. So if I come across things that are not, things don't appear to be posted correctly, we start to look what the problem is. Do we just not understand the coding? Do we just not understand how it's supposed to be handled? And we make sure that somebody's trained properly, that it's done correctly. So the first place I look to say, okay, is this something that's happening all the time, or is this something that just happened for the first time? And these are words from the auditor, state auditor's office, so I'm going to read you exactly what it says. In 2020, there was a material weakness in financial reporting. This issue is due to the auditor estate having to propose various audit adjustments or reclassifications to financial statement note corrections. To correct, the village needs to follow the UAN chart of accounts to make sure the village is accurately recording and reporting financial activity. The village should review the financial statements, notes prior to the report submission, and ensure the most current version of the notes are being used. When we prepare for audit, we are required to prepare notes to the financial statements, and they must be submitted with the financials. We lift them up to UAN. The notes were not accurate. They were missing information. That schedule was missing information, and therefore that's a material weakness because they're not correct. The second one that here was a significant deficiency, budgetary amounts not recorded in the accounting system. This issue is when we compare adopted appropriations and estimated receipts per the Certificate of Estimated Resources, and we just talked about that a few minutes ago, to the village's UAN system, appropriations and estimated resources. We had a few funds where the adopted amounts did not agree exactly to what was posted into UAN, and they're saying to correct it, the village needs to make sure that what is being adopted is also being posted to UAN. So it's a big deal that you submit the documents in, the county certifies out. When the document comes back, you verify that your accounting system matches what the county just certified. If not, of course, then we have this significant problem. And that was as straight from the auditor's words. So as you can see, some of the things that we just talked about is not new. It has gone on before. So I guess it's carrying on still. But we will correct it. And we actually already have. So what we certified in the permanent appropriations has been compared to the UAN system, and our numbers match their numbers, so we're back on track. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, let's go on to something else fun. Okay. The results of the village, I talked about the 2 property settlements. We'll skip that. Okay. All right, payroll. When I started to do payroll for the first time, and it's always unique when you walk into somebody else's system because you don't know the employees, you don't know what departments they work in, and you've got to figure this out. So I'm always asking the poor other girls that are in the office trapped with me, I always say, what's Randy do? What's this guy do? Where's that guy? What department is this guy from? And as I start to ask questions, I start to look in UAN, and they say, well, this individual works in the street department. And so I go to UAN and I open it up and I go, no, he works in the water department. And he said, no, he works in the street department. So we come to find out that we have some employees who transferred. However, the system didn't get fixed. So even though they're not working in the street department anymore, they're still being charged to the street department. So I had a guy that was about a year and a half charged to the wrong department, and a couple others that haven't been quite that long, but were also charged to the wrong departments. Another issue that we ran into was if I have an employee who is working in a different, I have a street guy who's called for a water break. Normally on a water break, you know this don't happen during the day usually. It's always in the middle of the night and only when it's 20 degrees below zero do they call a water break and you get to go out. So I'm looking at an employee who should be charged to water because we're on a water break, right? And it's probably overtime because that tends to be an overtime situation because they've already worked their basic hours for the day. Well, when I look to see if I have employees with more than one code or one department, I didn't find any. And so my first question was, do you not use your own employees for water breaks? They said, oh yeah, we always send, the street guys or the sanitation guys or whoever's available is on a water break. I said, well, then that means you're not charging them to that break. That tells me that you're charging them to whatever department they worked for originally. And the answer is yes, that's what was happening. So also has to be corrected. We spent hours working on making sure the codes are available for any employee who is charged to a different department, is actually charged to that department when they're out there working, when they're not in their department, that they're actually working in another department. So another issue, these kind of things that occur like this really skew a budget. Because I'm looking at a budget from a prior year going, okay, the street department, this is about what they pay every year. And then I'm looking at the water department and saying, well, this is their salaries for the year. And it's really not true. Because of these situations that are being incurred, it kind of skews what budgets are really, who's paying for what. And it kind of messes things up. So those are things that we have corrected. They have all been corrected. And we've taken care of all those situations. Another thing that we revealed itself was time cards. I hate time cards, hate everything about them. But I have time cards. And I noticed that people were clocking in early and clocking out late. Because they told me people work from 7 to 3:30. At least this group of people I was working with. 7 to 3:30 was clock in, clock out time. But they were clocking in early and clocking out late, and they were getting paid for it. So I walked down the hall. I said, Jesse, why are you doing this? He said, we don't do that. I said, yes, you do. So we've now corrected all of our employees that they clock in on time, they clock out on time like they're supposed to. If some employee is required to work over, and it does happen, they have to be approved by the supervisor. So those things have been put in place. Jesse's been worked with all the employees. Everybody's been told, this is how it works from now on. Let's, be careful. So in his defense and the defense of the management, I don't know that anybody knew that that time was being paid out. They may not have realized that that was happening because it doesn't really reflect that or weren't being told that that's how it was done. But it has been corrected now and we're on track and moving forward as we need to. And somebody said to me, well, what's the big deal? I said, well, the big deal is because, I'm an accountant, so of course I have to have numbers to go with everything. If I have an employee who makes $15 an hour and he manages to get a half an hour every day out of us, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 in the afternoon, every day, he's going to make about $3,000 additional revenue or pay, wages, a year. If I've got everybody doing it or 15 of them doing it, I'm up to $45,000. We can't afford that. You have to control these budgets. If you can't control your overtime, as many of you work, if you can't control your overtime, you can't meet a budget. So we have to control the overtime by making sure people are not just clocking in and out to get the extra hours. So that's just one of the things that happened. Another situation I ran into as I was posting utility distribution. You guys all know, because you live in the village, that you pay for water, sewer, and trash collection. The utility department collects that money and at the end of every month, they make a distribution to the village, because it goes into one bank account, they make a distribution to the village, and we put it in the general checking account. There's a big calculation involved, and because the village has debt out there for sewer especially, we have water debt and sewer debt, that some of that money is put into those debt funds to pay the debt. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get your debt paid off. So the revenue that comes in off of the water, sewer, and refuge is deducted, a little bit is put into each fund that has a debt attached to it, so that those debt funds are paid, because it's very important to pay your debt. So in looking at the distribution, because I had to make one, so I was looking at the distribution and I went, well, this is weird. Why are the water meters getting a distribution off the sewer? That doesn't make any sense. So poor Jesse, I go down the hall. I said, can you explain to me why the water meters are getting paid with sewer distribution? And of course, it's wrong. So I had to go call the auditors, the state auditors actually, and tell them that they missed something, which they were not happy about. So I sent over the paperwork that shows that in 2022, this had gone on from like April to December. And so an audit adjustment had to be created for 22, which changed funds. The money had to be put back into the sewer fund, take it away from the water fund. And I corrected all the 23 distributions to make sure that we're back on track. Also, I noticed that a fund was not getting its distribution, therefore its debt was not going to get paid. So Fund 5214 is just one of your sewer funds. It's actually a phase 5 of your sewer projects. And it should have been receiving $6,810.42 to get its debt paid off for the year. And unfortunately, it wasn't receiving its distribution. Therefore, at some point, it would be making its debt payments. So we corrected the form because it was just missing off the distribution form. It was put back onto the form or put onto the form, and the distribution will be correct from here out. So that has been corrected. Municipal income tax. We had a slight issue that we aren't following the distribution on the income tax the way it should be followed. So one of the problems we ran into was identifying if we put enough money, or spent enough money, I should say, in the funds that the income tax was built for. Some of it goes to police, some of it goes to streets, some of it goes to recreation, some of it goes to the general. Capital project or capital outlay gets some of it. And when the distribution was made straight into the general fund, it was kind of difficult to tell whether those percentages actually were spent on the things that the income tax ordinance said it should be. So to clean that up and make it a little easier, and also to make it easier for the departments to control expenditures, we moved out of the general fund. We moved the street department, the police department, and the recreation department into special revenue funds of their own, so that their budgets can be controlled a little easier. And those department heads can actually see that their departments are staying within the budget limits that they have. It'll also be easier to see that the income tax money is going into those funds and used on the items or the percentage it was supposed to. So that's just a cleanup of something that had to be done. Took a lot of hours, but we were able to clean that up as well. When I was reviewing the utility bills, I told you I was an auditor, just can't quit looking. I noticed that, because we looked at the telephone, electric, internet, and gas bills, all of them, we noticed that there wasn't a consistency about how some of the accounts were being charged to which departments. So I was lucky enough that poor Tammy, I got her on the phone with AT&T and everybody else, electric companies, gas companies, to locate these properties and who really should be paying for these electric bills. So when we were finished and the dust was settled, we realized that we had cell phones we could get rid of, and we did. We have internet that we were able to renegotiate down, so we got that cheaper because we negotiated the internets down a little bit. We corrected who was getting charged for electric, because some of them were incorrect. And gas was the same way. We had some gas bills that was going the wrong direction. And a lot of times this comes because there are so many bills and so many different properties, things get mixed up occasionally. And it's always good at some point to stop and look at those bills to make sure that they don't get mixed up. So we cleaned all that back up. But we were also, in the process, able to save money for the village at the process, same process. So that was great. When I was reviewing the diesel bill, your fuel bill for diesel, it looked like one department was being charged for diesel, but no one else. So again, I asked the question, is only one department use diesel, nobody else? And I got those looks. So from now on, diesel will be percentaged out, reallocated out to, based on who we think's using the diesel, and spread it out amongst the departments instead of one department taking the entire hit. Several bills from 22 actually had not been paid in 22, carried over into 23, and we had to pay them out of 23 budget. The bad part with that is it reduces your 23 budget because you didn't know these expenditures were sitting out there. It is now eating down the 23 budget. So you always want to get your bills paid within the year that they should be paid in, or you're supposed to be carrying over purchase orders into the next year to cover those expenses. Insurance policy is one of our next projects that we're going to work on. This is not unusual to find property on an insurance policy you don't own anymore. And it's also not unusual to find inventory not on the insurance policy that you do own. This happens. Unfortunately, you usually find it out when something catches on fire and you find out you don't have insurance. That's usually when we find it out. So we will be correcting that issue. We're going to get everybody out there, and this is an all-on-hands-deck situation, is locating every vehicle, every piece of equipment, everything that has to be insured will have to be investigated. I did this once for a college. You guys are small potatoes compared to a college. It was a nightmare, especially when the teachers move the equipment from one room to the other while you're in the middle of inventory. That's always fun. So that we're taking care of that. Review of property taxes. I'm sure you all heard this on the news more than once, maybe 2 or 3 times. We are delinquent in our property taxes. Shame on us. We have one property that has not been paid since 1968, and at least 30 that haven't been paid since 1994. Can't say why, not sure why, but we do know that we are fixing the situation. We've been waiting for the money to come in from the tax settlement, which came today, so that we can pay $138,000 to the county to get out of trouble. The problem with all of this is we didn't file what we call a DTE 23. And that is a form that reduces the taxes on property that's received in the village. You should be paying $2.06 for every property in the village. When they first handed me the bills to pay, I went, oh no, it was $18,000 for one of the partials. And I went, no, this ain't right. Then they handed me a few more, and they were still a problem. I said, guys, these should all be $2.06. So we discovered, and talking to the county auditor and the treasurer, that we have quite a few delinquent properties, and that's how this happened. Now, the problem with this is we have to pay our taxes first. The county will then let us file the DTE 23s. Then it will send up to the state, and then they'll come back. Then they will refund to us of the payment that we're going to receive only 3 years back. So all the years that weren't paid right, we will not be getting back. So we were only going to receive part of that money back. How much, we don't know yet, but unfortunately, you will get 3 years of each one of those delinquent properties. We'll get some of them back. So at least you'll get something back. And if we get them all corrected, we will only owe $2.06 from here out on every property. And maybe we'll pay our taxes on time, so. Okay, the next thing is we ran into, one of the hardest things we ran into is the fiscal officer was permitted to use her own personal email. And therefore, when she left the building, she took the email with her. So we had no access to all the vendors that were sending us invoices and the agencies that were sending us documentation and everybody else who was trying to communicate with us. We did not have that access to that information. So Jesse has worked his tail off trying to get all of these logins reset because If you've ever changed over one fiscal officer to another, you have login after login after login to correct. Because the state, everybody wants you to re-log in with new passwords and usernames and the whole bit. So the recommendation and what was done here for us by Mr. Fabian, sent me up an email, is we put in an email that will transfer from one individual to the next. So when I walk away and the new person comes in, the email will be a treasurer at winohio at comcast.net. So it will transfer from the one person to the next, and there won't be this confusion as how do we get our email. So that was another big problem. It's taken a lot of time to correct. When I was viewing the magistrate court distribution, because again I had to do that at the end of the month, I had to make that distribution, I noticed that some of the fines that were coming over were being posted to the wrong funds. So we have corrected that situation as well. They were headed to the wrong funds. There were audit adjustments. We already went over that. State rollback money. When the settlement that we just received comes out to us from the county, they also roll up to the state a portion of that settlement money. And the county does, or the state does something with it besides taking fees, of course. They play with it up there for a while and then they send it back down. So when the settlement money rolls back down to us, it changes form. It's no longer called real estate property. It is called property tax allocation because it's changed forms on the way back down. It was misposted as real estate when it really should have been coded as real property tax or property tax allocation instead. So that had to be corrected as well. I also noticed on the prior settlement, when I look back at a prior settlement, I noticed that the fees that were collected by the county were not always charged to the proper line item. When the fees are collected by the county, we should be charging a line item called tax collection fees. Pretty clear, pretty easy. But I was finding it in dues and fees, I was finding it in contract services, I was finding it all over the place. So we want to make sure that we put those fees in the proper line item where they belong. Everybody's aware of what's going on in there. Let's see what else. We had on the books two funds for the police auxiliary. Not sure why. Nobody seemed to know why. So we combined the two police auxiliary funds into one to make that a little bit more clear. Let's see. And when I was reviewing the audit report as well, I noticed that the auditors had made a statement about the notes of the financial statements being wrong, and they said that our debt schedule was not complete or accurate. So again, those things are very important for audit. They have to be cleaned up, and if we don't clean them up, then the auditors do clean them up, and that costs you money. So we want to make sure that those things are handled and taken care of correctly. When I pulled the audit report itself for 21, because again, that's the only one I have access to, these are some of the comments that were actually made. These are what they call material weaknesses. So they make the report as something called a material weakness. It says the fiscal officer did not abide by the adopted chart of accounts in coding and classifying various transactions, which resulted in adjustments and reclassifications that was filed in the financial statements. The village fiscal officer and management have agreed to post the adjustments in the village's accounting records, and therefore the financial statements are now materially correct because those adjustments were made. Some of those adjustments were the Corona relief money that came in was not posted to the right fund. Projects, there was 8 projects. These are water or sewer, they're all sewer projects. All these sewer projects were not posted on and off the books like they're supposed to. Again, this is not money moving around, this is paper, because the disbursements were made from the state, not us. However, they still have to reflect on the books. That, amounted to about $2 million were not recorded on the books. The magistrate court distributions were not even posted to the village records in 2021. Fines, license, and fees were not posted to village ledgers. The corona relief was also not in the right fund, but also was not in the correct line item. Police charges for services receipts were not correctly posted. Loan proceeds were not correctly posted. And all of this has been repeated for a while. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware that this is not something that just happened yesterday. It's been going on for a while. So the material weaknesses in the budgetary measures have been issued since 2017. The material weaknesses in the accurate posting of transactions, again, have been repeated since 2017. And the debt schedule errors have been going back as far as 2020. You take an annual audit here, so every year they come in and review your records. So it's hopefully we can correct all those things this time around, make sure that everything is right from here out. And then we will properly train the next fiscal officer and make sure that these things don't repeat themselves. Because it does not make it efficient for the village to operate when things are being posted incorrectly. And management's not aware of where their money really is, and therefore they could make mistakes in spending that money because they're not sure what's going on. So, does anyone have questions for me?
I have a couple.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier about the $4 million that you took away from the 14 million was?
We reduced the estimated revenue by $4 million.
So was that 4 million inflated?
The $4 million was a result of using the cash balance not only as a cash balance, but including it again on the revenue side. So technically, yes, it's inflated. The reason they were doing that was to zero base budget, which we are no longer doing that. We are going to real revenue instead.
Okay. If you found all this stuff, how come the auditors didn't?
Actually, they did. It's in your audit report. It's been in your audit report for years. The situation normally is that you do an audit report or an exit conference with the auditors. Unfortunately, you didn't understand, or management wasn't being informed of the things that were wrong and how to correct those and things. I've done many audit reports in my day. I have sat in these conferences with auditees many, many times. And it's up to you to do your job and do it well. You make sure that the individuals, when you leave, understand what they need to do to make those corrections so that when you come back, they're done, that you don't hit them again.
Okay, in your opinion of what you've been doing, how much money do you think was moved around without council knowing about it?
Honestly, we can't tell. I mean, I could look in the system and actually run a report on movements of money. There are actually supplemental movements that I could track in the computer. The UAN system would track it. We would have to go back to track it. But honestly, I'm not sure because your minutes don't reflect those things. So therefore, if those adjustments were being moved, they weren't moved with your permission. So,
Last one. If you weren't here and the same people were here, where would Wintersville be in 3 years, budget-wise, going down the same track they were on?
I would say at some point, especially with what we discovered with the tax situation, you would be in trouble. Because we are now going to tighten our belt to fix this problem that's occurred. It would be very difficult. You would have budget issues, as we are going to have, paying these taxes back.
But with your help and the changes that we made, we're still fiscally sound.
Yes, yeah. You're lucky.
I have a question.
For you.
How many days have you worked for us?
Oh, I didn't even think about this. I just billed out, I've been working, as Jesse will tell you, 16, 17-hour days.
How many?
I actually would have to count them off the list. I just sent him a bill of my hours, but it hasn't been pretty. It's been a long, long time. We've put lots of hours in trying to just, moving line items out of a budget into another fund is a little tricky and a little time consuming. But just making all the changes that have to make, it takes time. It takes time. The one best thing I will tell you about the village of Wintersville is the cooperation from the employees. whenever we come across something and ask for information or assistance, I've gotten 100% from everybody. So we could not do this if the administration was not cooperative. This would not work very well. So you have to have full cooperation to make these types of changes. You know, I'm no hero. I'm just here being able to make these corrections because I've done it for 45 years. So I've been doing it a long time. So I know how to make the corrections. We just have to get on the path and then move forward. Looking back is really not going to serve any purpose at this point, but moving forward and making it the village that it can be is where we need to go. This village has a lot of potential. You have the funding, you have people who are willing to serve, you have people willing to work. We just got to let them do their jobs. So, and clean up everything we can.
How do you know how to classify items?
Actually, it's kind of funny because new clerks are immediately told. The auditor of state has a ton of training videos. I mean, a ton. All you have to do is go out and watch them. It tells you everything, and anybody can watch them. Any one of you sitting here want to log into the auditor of state and go to their training site, you can watch any video you like on anything you could possibly want to know.
Is there a book?
There is a handbook. There's a village handbook. Actually, I brought mine because I couldn't find yours. But inside of the village handbook, there are classification codes. It tells you what revenue codes are supposed to look like. It tells you what the appropriation codes are supposed to look like, what the expenditure codes, the object codes. Everything's in the book. You just have to follow it. And if you really don't understand it, you watch the videos. And there's training. I just came back last week. I was 3 days of the Auditor of State's training. We had 2.5 days of training that I went to last week, that I sat through training. Several classes on ethics and record keeping and budgetary and everything you could possibly think of is offered by the state. And if you want to do the job, you go to the classes, watch the videos, take the training.
Is it required?
Yes. The Auditor of State requires that we are certified, that we have integrity certification, we have to have records certification, and we have to have hours in on training on the system, as well as the accounting principles and stuff. So, yeah, we have to have so many hours.
So how is it not, or should I say, how is there no accountability to not doing things right for so long on a standpoint of your position if there's required training and things by the state?
Unfortunately, people don't go to the trainings. They don't do what needs to be done to make sure that the job is perfect. I mean, if I receive a citation, I would go review the video, find out what I'm doing wrong, or ask the auditor to tell me, how do I fix this? Because they know how to fix it, because they just cited you for doing it wrong, so they know how to fix it. So,
So just saying you don't do it that way, that's not acceptable?
That's not really a real good method. It's one that I see a lot, but it's not a good method. So, yeah, I am notoriously going to villages that have problems because nobody else is crazy enough to do it. So, and, you know, I keep saying to every day I say, I've seen it all, but I haven't. Believe me, I haven't. I had a village in the area, which I will not disclose. My first day there, they called me. This is a classic. They called me and they said, we have a slight problem. Do you think you could come over and take a look? Just going to be a couple hours. That's all I need. Yeah, right. So I get over there, or I walk into a room that's paper filed all the way around the room up to your hips. And I said, anybody ever consider filing? They said, no, appears they don't file. So we started looking at the paper, stacks of paper, and I found a check, uncashed check. And I went, oh, God. So we dug a little bit deeper, found another one. Dug a little bit deeper, found more. I called every council member and told them, I said, I need every council member in the council chambers now. We went through all the paper in that office. Everyone we could find that was willing to sit down and sort paper helped us. We found $175,000 of uncashed checks in one day. One day. So, have I seen bad things? Yes. Is Wintersville in a bad situation? No. Just things that need tweaked, things that need corrected. Nothing that can't be fixed. Nothing that if these guys work as a team, there is nothing they can't do. You just got to work as a team. That I will tell you, I have had nothing but full cooperation with everybody in this place. every employee, everyone has been totally cooperative and doing this. This is not easy. Nobody wants to hear, something is wrong. Nobody wants to have to deal with the research involved. It's a lot of work. When poor Tammy was calling AEP, she actually got the man to show up and drive her around. He actually took her to the locations to find out which properties were which ones so that we could figure out how to bill them back. So, there are steps that you have to go over and above sometimes and drive around with the AEP guy or, get the gas guy to tell you where those locations are. And negotiate down the internet. We had a police officer that is our IT guy, and he actually was negotiating down internet costs. Now that we know that they're wrong, let's just try to fix it all the way. Let's just try to reduce them. We got rid of cell phones. Had some cell phones we probably didn't need. Time to get rid of them. So this is just the kind of stuff that happens.
You indicated you're not a hero. I think you've underestimated yourself. I would definitely say that you have been a savior, and we appreciate everything that you've done,
I'm an old
along
guy
with
that should
Jesse
be
and
retired,
everybody.
is what I am.
It's too much fun.
But thank you.
It's too much fun. Yeah, that's what my husband always says. But at one time I came home at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I thought he was going to kill me. He said, "Where have you been?" I said, "Well, I was in a township in rural county. It took me 2 hours to get home. I left at 2. He was not happy. But, it's not hard for me because I've done it for so long, and I've come into townships. I work with villages, townships, anyone that calls me. I go over to see if I can help. Normally, you can work it out. Sometimes it takes a lot longer than others, but depending on the situation and what the problems are. But everything can be fixed, and I always tell my new clerks that I train, because I also train clerks as I'm leaving, because my goal is not to stay here. This isn't where I'm going to stay. This is not the job that I'm here for forever. I am not here to take this job over. That's why I want to make somebody look bad. That's not the case. All I'm here for is to clean it up and train the next guy and get him ready to go. That's what I'm here for. And I know that some will probably feel that we are bad-mouthing them or bashing them or not treating them fairly, and that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the village back on track and do the job.
Mrs. Smith, I wanted to, applaud your efforts and thank you for your approach as well. I've been hit and miss the last month, more miss than hit, really. So I'd like to, thank you for a thorough investigation and perhaps follow up with you after this just to make sure I got all the notes here. There's a pile of stuff here that I'd like to review. One thing that I'd like to ask you is there any money missing? Is there any funds or is there anything that looks like it's been stolen?
No.
No. So it's all accounted for.
misclassifications.
It's more efficiencies and how we can do things better, continual improvement. Okay, I understand that. If and I do have a question too. If we've owed the county a lot of money for over these years, would the county not notify us that we're short this?
Well,
or is that a question for
having all
somebody
the
else?
envelopes in a drawer for all those years unopened, I guess they were notifying you, right?
Via the mail. So there's no such thing as a follow-up, hey, you're behind. Normally when you're behind on your taxes since
Well, normally you
1968.
end up in the newspaper.
You lose your stuff, okay?
Well,
if you don't pay your taxes since 68,
Well,
don't
we
be
were
like
laughing
thinking.
that they could have sold the village hall.
Oh,
It's
well.
like, wouldn't that have been funny if they just sold the village hall to at the sheriff's sale?
Well, again, thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your approach. It's greatly appreciated, and this very thorough investigation. It's now our time to take advantage of what you've guided us towards, and thank you for that.
You have missed a couple meetings. We've talked about doing a training.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get to go through a training from budgets all the way through. So we will work with the council because I can actually do a training on what is my job and how am I supposed to do it. So we will work with the council members at a training and just talk about when you look at a report, what are you supposed to be looking for? What are you supposed to notice? So our goal is, before I leave, is that we do a council training so that you guys, when you get a report laid in front, because you have a stack of them that you tell me you've never seen before, when you get this stack of reports, now what? What do I do with it? What, lots of numbers, but
Yeah, it could be overwhelming.
yeah, what are all these numbers for and how do I know what's going on? So we will do a training.
So what are you working on from here on out? Was this just the budget?
The budget is done. It's filed.
Right.
Right now, I spent today, this afternoon, actually putting in blanket purchase orders because you guys were using purchase orders pretty much for every expenditure instead of putting blankets in, which reduces the workload tremendously because you don't need an individual purchase order for every purchase made. You should be using blankets and taking care of those situations and more efficiently with blankets. So our goal now is to continue reviewing the expenditures that are coming through, because there's new ones probably still coming in that we need to look at, but help these guys get the inventory straightened up and anything else, and then maintain until we find a new clerk. So if anybody knows
Thank you.
anybody out there with some accounting abilities, send them our way.
I'll go one more, sorry. When we were talking about Jay's brought up the $138,000 worth of back taxes that's been going on since, what, 1968?
Well, one of them was
One of them.
1960.
How many plots of land does that
there-
encompass?
32 or 33?
There's 30-something that are delinquent.
There are 72 total properties, 26 are delinquent.
So, and the people who were doing this, all they had to do was send in a DTE 23,
It's a
And it's-
two-page document
and instead of paying $140,000, we'd be paying $2.06.
per property,
That's all come upon interest.
per parcel. Yeah, right now, the accumulation you're looking at is interest and then not paying the right amount year after year after year after year, not accumulating the right amount is going to hurt you.
Didn't you say on those properties that's just the way Jefferson County does it? Because anybody else will get that bill? Like the ones that they hid, when you get the bill every year? You say the county, the way they do it here or something?
Well, the county,
Yeah.
for all of you, for everybody in this room, get your little papers in the mail that says you owe it by a certain date, usually in February. You have to pay your taxes by February. So we were receiving the same documents as you do at home. And unfortunately, it appears that they either weren't being opened or they weren't being pushed to be paid. I'm not sure why. I just know that we found a bunch of them, right, Jess?
Yes.
Found a whole bunch of them.
I have one more. So when do you think Wintersville actually had a accurate budget? When? Like since you've been looking back, when you, like how many years ago?
I don't know.
Or do you just keep guesstimating? That's what
I think
costs so much
that-
money.
I think that their method was different. They chose to zero budget. So their approach is not illegal. People use that kind of method. However, it's not necessary in a village to use that type of method. Most of us use the method where you just reflect the actual revenue that you really think you're going to get, because it's also a guesstimate then too, but you don't want to inflate it, because that inflation pushes the appropriations to be inflated, which puts the potential of spending money you don't have.
So more fake money, not accurate. Right.
Yeah, it's not really money, it's just paper, but you're laying numbers out there that could be spent.
Like crisscross spending.
Yeah, it would be, it could happen, because if you set that budget out there and somebody didn't know how you did it, they could actually spend that money thinking that revenue does exist.
So council would think they have more money than what Wintersville actually has.
You would think that looking at your budget.
And then
So then we would keep fixing stuff and spending money that hasn't been fixed in years, and then we look like the bad guys. 'cause
yeah. And then I have
it's
one
been
more.
inflated.
We put these time clocks in, was it about a year ago? And then before that, they just went by paper and pen. So they never really had
We're
an
doing a
accurate time.
combination right now.
Yeah.
We went back to the paper. They're
Yeah.
still clocking in and out, because they want to clock in and out
Yeah.
to make sure they actually show up to work. However, we need the paper because the clock does not tell me where you were. So I don't know where you were when you were clocking in. Are you on the street department? Are you on a water break? Are you in the sewer department?
So it's costing all
Are you in the trash truck? I mean, where are you? Because wherever you're working, that's where it needs to be charged.
So each time card would get like their own status, street, water, like that?
The time card actually doesn't work like that. It just shows us you clocked in and out for the day. But the sheet that we created to go with it tells us
Identify the person.
where you were, what you were working on. Yeah. In my village, we're small enough that we don't have departments. I have, everybody is all hands on deck. So wherever you go in the morning, they tell you where you're going for the afternoon, and that's the way it was. So I have to have what you were doing. I mean, they literally have to write for me, okay, I went, took quarters out of the water box, then I went over and I mowed, and then I went over and I worked on a water break. I mean, I have to know because every hour has to be charged accordingly. And that's not unusual to bill that way. Attorneys do it, accountants do it. It's not unusual. When I worked for a CPA firm, every minute of my time was clocked to somebody, some client. Believe me, my boss didn't want to pay those hours. Some client was paying my hours. So yes, every second of my day, and attorneys do the same thing, right? Clock out every minute of the day to somebody.
I have a question for you. You mentioned that we were voluntarily doing an annual review, an annual audit. But you had mentioned before that we should only be doing it biannually.
The only time you are required to do an annual audit in this village is if you hit $750,000 in federal funding. You did hit it in 2020, but you have not hit it in 21 or 22. From what I understand from talking to the auditors, this was chosen to have an annual audit done. It's not required, but for some reason, you guys have chosen to do it. But you are not forced to do it, only if you hit $750,000 in federal funds.
So we don't have to submit it every year. So the requirements is every 2 years.
I think it was changed, did they say, what, 2017 they changed
I
it
think
to?
17, for some reason in 17, they went to
17.
an annual audit.
Yeah.
I'm not
But you
sure
also
why.
mentioned that when we were doing the annual, that for 5 years, the same errors were occurring in that audit, even though they were given the audit review and told these need to be corrected.
Yeah, according to your audit, that's actually, anybody can pull this audit if you want to see it. Auditor State website, just search audits. It's not hard to find. And in the back of it, it tells you how long they've made that same citation or recommendation. And this one dates back to 2017. They've been making those same recommendations.
And by making those errors, this costs us
It costs
additional
you a lot
funds.
of money, because I can tell you as a former auditor, if the records are not good, you will pay more, because they have to look more. So if they pull a sample, because everything's based on samples when you're doing an audit, so they pull a sample, and if the sample has too many issues with it, then you pull another sample. So if the sample is clean, then you don't have to pull that second sample, but if the sample is not clean, you pull additional items to make sure, because the whole goal of an audit is not to find theft. That's not what they're there for. They're only there to state that the financial statements are not materially misstated. That's all they're there for, to say that. And if they are misstated, that there's errors like you guys have with adjustments that aren't on the records correctly, they have to fix those adjustments, you have to agree to them, and then now the financials are correct. But, and it's not that they're perfect, that's not what they're saying. They're saying they're not materially misstated. That's what they're saying.
Okay.
So you can't check every single transaction. It's not possible.
How much does your audit cost?
Well,
Where
I'm
you
in a
are?
small village, but I also get what they call agreed upon procedures, which means that I do everything right. So they come in, they do a very small sample, and they leave. My audit was $3,500. Yours is about 20.
Yearly?
20,000 a year.
You're closing in on that.
How is it that we voted on the budget, but it was always a temporary budget and not a permanent?
I have no idea. I just know that if you voted on a permanent, you didn't give it to the county because they didn't have record of you doing it since 2017.
So we voted on it and they just never turned it in.
I don't know. You'd have to look at your minutes to see if
Well, you have- you have
you
your-
have to pass it by April the 1st, so.
You have your temporary and then your permanent. Then we were voting on the temporary and then a permanent one, but apparently they never turned it in.
Obviously not. I don't know what the difference is between your temporary and your permanent, because I've only seen one document, and I don't know if it's the same document. It's possible that they pass the temporary as a permanent, and then they don't pass a permanent. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at your minutes to see exactly what the wording is, or how they're doing it, but
But technically, we haven't passed a permanent budget since,
You haven't filed one, let's put
Filed
it
one.
that way. I don't know if you passed one, but you haven't filed one.
well, thank you.
Is that a violation with the state? Do they see that?
Actually, I was surprised it wasn't in your audit report.
Okay.
I don't know if they didn't verify that with the county, but I haven't seen 22's audit report, because it's still not done. So it could be in 22's audit report, but it wasn't in 21. It did cite you for not using the budgetary numbers that the county certified, but it didn't mention that you also didn't file the permanent appropriations.
Is the audit done when you're done? When you say it's done? For like closure for the audit? I mean, since we're.
You mean as an auditor? They will release the audit when they're ready, and then they'll hold a post-audit with the officials. And that is something that I highly recommend that you all attend, and I highly recommend you ask questions. Because if there's anything in that audit, you need to know what it is, and if it's getting corrected or not corrected. Because, again, it costs you money to not make corrections. So if you repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again, you know, you're paying for mistakes that you really don't need to. Everything can be fixed, everything can be done correctly. And the actual, it's kind of funny because the material adjustments that you guys are receiving, it's really easy to do. You go out to the website, the OWDA or OPWC website, you look at the distribution list, you print it, you bring it back to UAN's system, and you sit there and you post to the revenue expense. Take you about, 10 minutes each time. It's really not that hard. It's really quite easy. But for some reason, some people just don't do it.
So then it's basically up to council to make sure that everything's done right.
Absolutely. You guys are the ones that make the decisions. A lot of times people think fiscal officers make decisions. We don't make decisions. We present things, lots of things. We ask questions. We review things. We take care of things. It's our job to look at every expenditure and every receipt to make sure it's properly classified, to make sure that it's a real expenditure and not something fake. But that's our job. Our job is to make sure things are right and that make sure that we protect you all. It is my eyes that you have to depend on. Because you don't look at every single invoice. You don't look at every single receipt that comes through. You have to trust that I'm doing the job right.
But it's the fiscal officer's duty to present you with everything.
Correct. If you come down to that office right now and say, I'd like to see the file on all the credit card payments, I can lift that file and hand it to you in 2 seconds. And if you want to look at them, you can look at them. It's all open to anyone who chooses to look at them.
So when we asked before and we were told no,
Yeah, anyone sitting right out here can come right downstairs with me and say, I'd like to
14
see
months.
anything but except social security numbers and birth dates and that kind of fun stuff, and medical records. Literally can ask for any record that's in my office, any record. All they have to do is file a records request, don't even have to put it in writing, all they have to do is be verbal. Say, could I see this? Absolutely, that's what it's there for. It's called open records, that's what it's for. But council should have always received, and that's something we can talk about, what's in front of you. My council receives every single month the fund status report, which is the little small one that's in front of you. And for those of you that have never seen this thing before, it actually gives you the cash balances by fund. So it says, okay, we have $3.4 million in the bank, $3.4 million. And which fund owns a portion of that $3.4 million? It gives you that information right straight down the page. It also tells you that you have an investment of $250,000 and a secondary checking account of $7,556, giving your primary checking account a balance of $3.2 million.
Didn't you come across a checking account or a dormant account with a significant amount of money in it? It wasn't used for a couple of years?
We found one, but it was reversed in at some point, but we did find one. Now, we do have the one that's $100,000. that is inside of this checking account, because it is a checking account. It is not an investment. Therefore, it doesn't show up as an investment like these other two do. It's inside, but there is one that.
But it wasn't,
it's
it
buried
wasn't
in these
used for a
numbers.
while.
No, it wasn't used since.
It hasn't been used for a long time?
2019, it wasn't used.
It's been a long
dormant.
time.
And that was $100,000 in that one?
I think it's got $100,000.
There's
in it.
wasn't it 100, 150, then 100, right?
Yeah, I
So
think that's
total like
correct.
350.
Yeah. So, yeah, there are, now, on the UAN system actually records all this revenue, any checking accounting, savings accounting, investment account is actually logged into UAN and it's reflected in these numbers. I did not find any bank accounts that were not in these numbers. We have not found one yet. As far as I can see that you have all the accounts that we have available are on these records. The other record that you have is the revenue status report. And this early in the year, the percentages aren't really high. But what we like to see this thing do is to go into negatives, if you can. A revenue report going into negatives is a good thing, because that means you receive more money than you thought you were going to get, which is always good. And there's nothing better than receiving money and you didn't think it was coming. So that's kind of what the revenue status report. At this point, we should be sitting around 25% of collections because we're in the third month of 12. So the first thing I do when I glance at this report is to see where we are. And since we put that $200,000 in the bank today, we are at 33% in the general fund. So we are above the 25, which is good. Because if you don't see these numbers rising like they should, you may have to turn around and reduce your appropriations. Because if revenues coming in is not coming in as anticipated, you may have a problem. We are anticipating right now there could be an issue in the street fund. Because if you've never heard the commercials out there, ODOT is trying to get somebody to give them a really good idea on what to do when people start driving electric cars and stop buying gas, because they can't come up with an idea to earn money. So if you haven't seen that commercial, they're up our way all the time, you see it. So we know it's going to happen because we get our gasoline money from motor vehicle registrations and also from people driving, gas taxes. If people stop driving or start driving electric cars, our gas is going down, therefore our revenue's going down. And we know it's coming. We just don't know how quickly, but it will happen to us. If we lay a number out there and all of a sudden that number's not coming in like we anticipated, you have to be responsible and reduce those appropriations, because if you don't, you could overspend. So it's just like at home. If you're working a job and you lose that job, are you going to keep spending at the same level? No, you can't. Got to change things. And we'll do the same thing, and that's what the revenue report does. As long as that revenue comes in at the level you anticipate, you're just fine. You're going to make it through the rest of the year. But if you start seeing shortages in that revenue report, you got to make changes. The appropriations is the other report that I gave you. This is the Bible, right here. This is what controls expenditures. This is what controls every single department in this village. They all have one of these reports, and I've got to get those to them, print those out for everybody. But we have now finalized this budget, and we're ready to release it to the departments so they can start watching their own expenditures as well. So they will get, each department will get their own sheets that they've never received before, but they will start getting their own sheets, and they will be responsible to stay in budget. I expect them to stay in budget. That's what they're there for, to keep an eye on expenditures. That I tried to put on your reports, which department is which, because I know it's very confusing what these codes mean. So I tried to make sure that you knew where the mayor was. He's in 710, council's in 715. So on and so forth, so that you had an idea what those departments are. We also, you can see that we pulled the police department, the rec department, and the street department out of the general fund into their own funds. It'll be much easier to keep an eye on those departments and how they're surviving. And several of your departments asked me for that as well. They wanted their own budgets so that they could see the money coming in and the money going out.
Well, this is the first year, I believe, we're letting the departments set their budgets.
Correct. We actually worked with the departments to set their own budgets, to assist us with those budgets. As a fiscal officer or an administrator, either one, we only know so much about what those departments are actually thinking for the next year, because anytime we're going to start working on the 24 budget, believe it or not, we're still in 23 and we're going to start working on 24. But I don't know what they know. I have no idea what they need unless we communicate. And that's really requires a communication from every single department, every single employee to tell me what they think is going to happen in the next year, what they anticipate to happen. I don't know how old their trucks are. I don't know if the backhoe's ready to blow. I don't know those things. They have to tell me those things. Is that backhoe going to make it, or we got $20,000 of repair going into that backhoe next year? I mean, it's my job to put the money where it needs to be, or try to find it so we can make those things happen. But I don't know everything. I have to rely on them to tell me that. We got a fleet of police cars. I know Luke can tell me which ones need worked on, which one needs to be replaced, which ones, need new tires tomorrow. I don't know those things. They have to tell me those things. They have to make sure that I know where those things need to be. If we're going to give a pay raise, it's up to me to figure out whether we can afford it.
Yeah.
That's my job. Can we afford it? How are we going to do it? If they asked me that question today, I'd say, well, let's pay our taxes first. Then we'll talk about raises. Unfortunately, you put those situations on the backs of your employees. I hate to do that, but your money only goes so far. It's just like home. You can only pull it so far. So we got to cover our things that need to be covered first, and then we'll talk about other stuff. So.
Anybody else have anything for Melanie?
I just noticed your payment lists here.
Yes.
So this is all from,
I ran that from January 1st all the way to today.
and this is out of the UAN system.
Yes. The UAN system will kick out expenditures in any way you ask it to kick out expenditures. So if you find an expenditure on the list that you would like to question, you can either ask me to scan you a copy of the invoices, or you can ask me to give you more detail off the UAN system. Every vendor is behind me in a cabinet and can be pulled out real quick, and if you want it scanned to you, we can scan it to you. So don't feel like you can't ask for stuff, because if you see something on that list and you go, what is that? Especially credit cards, they are the worst, because all you can do is say it's a credit card. I can't give you every single vendor on that credit card. I can't give you every type of expenditure on that credit card. Or I'd have a list about 10 miles long. But if you'd like to see the credit cards, I'll be more than happy to pull the invoices for you. And you can look exactly what was being paid and what was being charged to those credit cards. Anyone can see that.
Anyone have anything else for Melanie?
Nope.
Well, thank you very much, Melanie. We appreciate your time, and thank you for speaking up and giving us a great rundown. And I know Jesse and I and the rest of council, we all look forward to continue working with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, council, anyone else have anything for new business? Okay. We have no transfers tonight. I believe Melanie told me we'll do the payment of the bills at the next meeting.
Actually, you don't have to, because they're in front of you. I did get the list ready. So that big list that you have, you can either hold it for next meeting, or you guys can glance at it. There's a lot of items on it because I did run it from January 1st to today. So there's a lot of stuff. You may want to wait until next meeting to give you time to look at it.
Okay. Everybody good? Are we good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll wait to pay the bills at the next meeting.
A lot
So
of items.
lastly, we just need a motion to adjourn.
Happy Easter.
Yeah, happy Easter.
So
everyone.
moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Happy Easter.
Mr. Merriman.
Yay.
Mr. Mattern.
Yay.
Dr. Scarpone.
Yay.
Mr. DeStefano.
Yay.
Mr. Spence. Yay. Mrs. Dameron.
Yay.
This meeting is adjourned. Our next regular council meeting will be April 20th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Thank you.